My heels tapped a crisp rhythm across the marble lobby of my building, the sound too sharp for a Tuesday night. The concierge lifted his eyes, then softened his voice the way people do when they can tell you're tired. "Evening, Miss Park." "Evening," I said, and forced my mouth into something that resembled a smile. 35. Today. I'd spent 14 hours inside a glass tower downtown, turning a client's near disaster into a headline that didn't bleed. The kind of day that used to feel like proof I was becoming someone. Now it just felt like, wait. The elevator was empty. The mirrored wall gave me my own reflection back, sleek hair pinned up in a twist, blazer still buttoned, lipstick still intact because I'd applied it like armor. My eyes looked too awake for the hour, like they were waiting for something. I checked my phone again as the doors closed. No missed calls. No texts. No "happy birthday" from my parents. No stupid gift from my brother. Not even a half-hearted group message from an aunt who used too many exclamation points. It didn't matter, I told myself. I was 35. I handled crisis communications for a biotech company that made people's lives better. I negotiated with journalists who smelled blood. I didn't need a cake. I didn't need anything. But when I opened my condo door, the small cake I'd bought that morning sat on my coffee table like a witness. It was vanilla with strawberries because it was my favorite, and I had learned a long time ago that if I wanted my favorite anything, I had to choose it myself. A single candle stood unlit in the center, slightly crooked, like it had been pushed into place in a hurry. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered, and the silence didn't answer. I toed off my shoes, set my bag down carefully like I was still at work, and stared at the cake for longer than was normal. The apartment was immaculate, clean counters, folded throw blankets, the scent of the lemon candle I always lit when I wanted the place to feel warm. Tonight it felt hollow anyway. I told myself I would not check social media. I told myself I would go shower and open a bottle of wine and move on. Instead, my fingers made a liar out of me. I opened my laptop. I clicked. I scrolled. The first image stopped my breath mid-inhale. My brother, Connor, in a navy suit, a champagne flute raised high. A gold banner behind him read, "Congrats on your partnership." My father stood beside him, hand on his shoulder like Connor was an heir being presented to the world. My mother's smile was bright enough to look like it could power the room. Around them, uncles and aunts I hadn't seen in years, cousins who never remembered my job title but always remembered Connor's, all clustered together under warm lights. The timestamp said 4 hours ago. 4 hours ago, it was still my birthday. I scrolled down. More photos. A cake big enough for a wedding. A gift table. A string quartet in the corner like this was a small charity gala instead of my family's Tuesday. I stared until the pictures blurred. Then one thought cut through everything else, clean and cold. They didn't forget. They chose. And I had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, the way my body always did after an emotional hit, like it thought keeping watch would prevent the next one. The cake sat untouched in the kitchen. The candle stayed unlit. I brewed coffee, stood at my window, and watched Boston move into the day with the steady confidence of people who assumed they belonged wherever they were going. At 9 sharp, I was back inside my office tower, the air crisp with chilled ventilation and ambition. The elevator opened to our floor, and my team was already hunched over screens, the glass-walled conference room glowing with dashboards and timelines. Ariana, my direct report, glanced up. Elena, the Metavault reporter, emailed again. "Send me the thread," I said, setting my laptop down. "And pull the latest trial numbers. We don't respond without receipts." That was the rule at work. You don't speak until you can stand behind what you say. It was funny, in a bitter way, how different my life was depending on where I stood. In this building, my name meant something. My voice held weight. People waited for my decisions. Outside it, at family dinners, at group chats, at gatherings where my brother's laugh filled up the room like a natural resource, my name was something people stepped over on their way to the main event. The morning was a blur of calls and approvals. At noon, my CEO, Evan Mallory, a man whose hair always looked like it had been professionally negotiated, stopped by my desk. "Good work yesterday," he said, and his tone wasn't casual. Evan didn't do casual praise. "You kept us out of a 3-day headline cycle." "I did my job," I said. He smiled like he could hear the edge in my voice. "I'm serious. The board is serious too." He slid a folder onto my desk, then walked away before I could open it. Ariana peeked over my shoulder. "What is that?" "I don't know," I said, and didn't open it right away because I didn't trust anything good to happen without a cost. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Connor. "Need a quick favor. Call me when you can. No happy birthday. No, sorry I missed yesterday. Just a request," wrapped in the casual confidence of someone who had never needed to ask if he was allowed to take space in my life. I stared at the screen for a long second, then flipped my phone face down. At 6, when the office finally emptied, I didn't go straight home. I went downstairs to the tiny Dominican place on the corner and picked up a paper bag of empanadas and rice, then walked 3 blocks to my neighbor's apartment. Mr. Alvarez opened the door before I knocked fully, as if he'd been listening for me. "Right on time," he said, eyes crinkling at the corners. "I was about to accuse you of abandoning me." "Never," I said, and held up the bag. He stepped aside to let me in. His apartment smelled like cinnamon and old books. A small radio played soft jazz from the kitchen, the kind of sound that made your shoulders drop without you realizing they'd been tense. For 2 years, Tuesday nights had been our ritual. I brought dinner. He insisted on dessert, usually something homemade that made me remember what it felt like to be cared for without a transaction attached. He was 78, a retired high school teacher, and somehow he saw me more clearly than the people who had raised me. We sat at his small table with the worn wooden surface and the mismatched plates. "You look like you're carrying a suitcase nobody can see," he said, passing me a fork. I laughed once, short and humorless. "That obvious?" He waited. He never pushed, but he also never let me hide if I chose to speak. So I told him. About the silence. About the photos. About Connor's party landing like a door slamming shut. Mr. Alvarez listened without interrupting, except to refill my water. When I finished, he rested his hand on the table. Not reaching for me, just close enough that I could feel the option of comfort. "Some families," he said quietly, "love in a way that feels like a spotlight. And some people spend their lives trying to stand in it." I swallowed hard. "What if you've never been in it? Then you learn to make your own light," he said. "And you stop confusing absence with a reflection of your value." I nodded like I understood. I didn't. Not yet. But I wanted to. If only I knew what I was walking into. On Friday, a notification popped up at 4:58 p.m., just as I was packing up to leave. "Congratulations. Your annual performance bonus has been approved." I clicked the email. The number stared back at me like it belonged to someone else. $64,000. My stomach tightened, not with joy, but with the same wary alertness I felt when a journalist emailed, "Quick question," in the subject line. A bonus like that didn't happen by accident. It meant Evan had fought for it. It meant the board had voted. It meant my work was visible in a way that mattered. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking, and for a moment I felt something warm bloom in my chest. Then my phone rang. Mom. I hesitated long enough to feel my pulse in my throat, then answered. Hi. Elena, sweetheart, she said, voice bright, like she was calling from the middle of a well-lit room. I caught you. Listen, your father and I are putting together something special for Connor and Sabrina next month. A little celebration dinner for his partnership. Nothing too crazy, but you know how people are. People are. Her favorite phrase when she meant our circle expects things. She continued without taking a breath. We need help coordinating. You're so good at handling details. Catering, place cards, the florist, oh. And Connor mentioned you have that contact at Harborview Seafood? Can you get us a discount? I held the phone away from my ear for a second, then brought it back, like the distance would make her hear me. Mom, I said carefully. You didn't call me on my birthday. A pause so clean I could hear the hum of my office lights. Oh, she said, and the sound was almost convincing, surprised, regretful. Honey. With everything happening with Connor, it slipped our mind. Slipped. Like my birthday was a receipt they lost in a coat pocket. I stared at the bonus email on my screen, the number still lit up. The warmth inside me cooled into something else, something steadier. It didn't just slip your mind, I said, quieter than I felt. You were at his party. Another pause. This one sharper. Well, she said, and her tone turned slightly defensive, slightly annoyed, the way it did when I disrupted the script. We didn't think you'd mind. You're always busy. I thought of myself at 11, sitting at a restaurant booth with a balloon tied to the corner, waiting until the candle melted into my slice of cake because Connor had a soccer tournament and my parents promised they'd be right back. I thought of 17, being sent to my aunt's house for the weekend because Connor was touring colleges and, this is important for his future, Elena. I thought of my graduation dinner, when my father stood up to toast Connor's internship announcement halfway through my speech. Mom, I said, and my voice shook. I'm not busy. I'm your daughter. She sighed like I was being dramatic. Anyway, she said briskly, about the dinner. We're thinking you could contribute too. Since you're doing so well. Contribute. I looked at the bonus again. And that's when everything shifted. Send me the details, I said, my voice suddenly calm. I'll take a look. I hung up before she could hear the change in my breathing, before she could pivot the conversation back to flowers and budgets like she hadn't just stepped on my heart with a polite heel. I sat alone in my office, the skyline turning soft gold outside the window, and I made a quiet promise. I would stop being the family's invisible emergency fund. It happened on Monday, the way betrayals often do, through something small and careless. An email came in with the subject line, Edward's family dinner planning thread. For a split second I thought it was spam. Then I saw the recipients. My mother, my father, Connor, and me. They'd added Elena to the thread and not noticed until the message had already landed in my inbox. My mother's private planning voice sat there in black and white, like a curtain pulled aside. I clicked. The chain was long. Weeks of messages. My father, Elena should contribute. At least 15,000. It's not unreasonable. My mother, she just got her bonus, didn't she? It's time she supports the family for once. Connor, she'll do it. She always does. Then, lower down, a newer message from my aunt. Also make sure Elena's name is spelled right on the seating chart. It's Elena, not Elena. I stared at that last line until my vision tightened. Not Elena. My own family couldn't hold my name in their mouths correctly, but they could hold my paycheck like it was theirs. My hands went cold. Not shaking, cold. Like my body had decided to preserve energy for whatever came next. My phone buzzed again. Connor. I answered, because part of me wanted to hear how casually he would ask. Hey, he said, voice smooth. Quick thing. I'm meeting the Harborview guys tomorrow. Need the VP's direct line. Can you send it? That's a client contact, I said. Yeah, and, he replied, laughing like I'd made a joke. Family helping family. There it was. The phrase they used like a weapon. Connor, I said, and my tone was so professional it surprised me. No. I'm not giving you their direct line. Silence. Then a slow exhale like he was deciding whether to be amused or angry. Okay, he said. So you're doing that thing. What thing? The thing where you pretend you're not part of this family when it's inconvenient. His voice sharpened. I'm building something real, Elena. Not press releases. I felt the old bruise flare, the one my father had pressed on my whole life. It's not inconvenient, I said. It's a boundary. He laughed again, but it wasn't warm. Sure. Boundaries. Listen, Mom said you're being weird since your birthday. Don't make this a whole thing. But it was already a thing. It had always been. After I hung up, Ariana appeared at my door with a file in her hands. We're on in 10 minutes, she said, then paused when she saw my face. Are you okay? I nodded, because I was at work, and at work I could always be okay. The client meeting went flawlessly. My voice didn't waver once. I mapped out messaging strategy like I was placing chess pieces. But the moment the call ended, my phone lit up again. A text from my mother, dinner Sunday. Be there. We need to discuss your contribution. Sunday arrived too quickly. The Edwards house, my parents' house, sat in Wellesley behind wrought iron gates and carefully trimmed hedges. The kind of place that made people lower their voices as soon as they stepped inside, as if money required reverence. The dining room was set with the good china. Candles in silver holders. Napkins folded into perfect triangles. My mother's version of peace offering, or maybe a stage. Connor and Sabrina were already seated when I walked in. He stood to hug my mother. He hugged my father. He didn't stand for me. Elena, my father said, as if I was a colleague arriving late to a meeting. Sit. Dinner was choreography. Connor talked about his firm. My father nodded at the right places. My mother filled in any emotional gaps with polished stories that made Connor sound like destiny. I pushed food around my plate and waited. It came with dessert. My father set down his fork and looked directly at me. We need to finalize your contribution, he said. My contribution, I repeated. Yes, he said, voice firm. 15,000. That covers the venue deposit and catering. My mother touched Connor's hand like he was a prince. Family supports family, sweetheart. The words hit me like a slap, not because they were new, but because I finally heard what they meant. We support Connor. You support us. I'm not contributing, I said. The room went silent, like a record needle lifting. My mother blinked. Elena, no, I said again, and my voice stayed calm. I'm not paying for this. My father's jaw tightened. Do you hear yourself? I do, I said, and my heart beat hard against my ribs. And for the first time, I'm listening. Sabrina shifted uncomfortably. Connor's eyes narrowed like he couldn't believe a door he'd always walked through was suddenly closed. You're being selfish, Connor said. My father leaned forward. After everything we've done for you. I set my spoon down carefully. What have you done for me? My mother's eyes filled instantly, like she'd been storing tears in reserve. How can you say that? I stood, chair scraping softly across the floor. I'm leaving, I said. My father rose too. If you walk out, Elena, don't expect what? I asked, and it came out quieter than I intended. Your love. Your approval. I've never had it unless I was useful. My mother reached for my wrist. Don't make a scene. But for once, I didn't smooth it over. I didn't apologize for existing. I walked out. In my car, hands trembling on the steering wheel, my phone buzzed again and again. Messages. Calls. The family system trying to snap me back into place like a rubber band. But I had no idea what was coming next. Monday morning, my mother called at 7:12 a.m. Tuesday morning, 7:12 again. By Wednesday, she left voicemails that sounded less like concern and more like strategy. Your father is barely sleeping. You're humiliating us. People are asking questions. Connor is devastated. This rebellious phase has to end. Rebellious. I listened to one voicemail while brushing my teeth and felt something inside me detach, like a hook slipping free. That afternoon, my father appeared in the lobby of my office building. Ariana texted me from across the floor, "Your dad is here." He looks intense. I found him by reception, his presence so polished and commanding that the receptionist had straightened her posture without knowing why. "Dad," I said, low. "This is my workplace." He smiled without warmth. "Then act like it." He didn't lower his voice. He didn't care that people were watching. "Your mother is sick with worry," he said. "All because you're punishing us over one forgotten birthday." "One," I repeated, and it almost made me laugh. He checked his watch, an old habit, a small cruelty. "Connor needs this dinner to go well. Our reputation matters. And you," his gaze flicked over my blazer, my badge, the life I built without them, "you're going to make us look fractured." There it was. Not love. Not regret. Image management. I took a breath. "I have a meeting in 5 minutes. He stepped closer. "This conversation isn't finished." "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." I turned and walked away before he could stop me. My knees shook when I got back to my office, but my hands were steady when I opened my laptop. I didn't open the family thread again. I opened a search tab. Cabin for sale, Vermont waterfront. The words looked strange at first, like a fantasy. Then the listings loaded. A-frame cabins with wraparound decks. Small houses with stone fireplaces. A lake so still it looked like someone had laid glass over the earth. My breath slowed. I clicked one listing and felt my chest expand with something dangerously close to hope. Not the hope that my parents would change. A different kind. The hope that I could build a life so solid that their lack of love couldn't shake it. That night, I met Mr. Alvarez for Tuesday dinner and told him, "I think I want to buy a place." He raised an eyebrow. "A place?" "A sanctuary," I said, and my voice sounded like mine again. He nodded slowly, then smiled. "Now that," he said, "is a birthday gift worth giving yourself." And that's when everything shifted. 2 weeks later, I stood on a wooden deck overlooking a quiet Vermont lake. The air smelled like pine and cold water. A loon called somewhere far off, the sound lonely in a way that felt honest, not punishing. The cabin was modest, 2 bedrooms, an open kitchen, big windows facing the water. It wasn't glamorous like my parents' house. It didn't try to impress anyone. It felt like it belonged to a person who mattered. The realtor, a woman named Beth with a sun-worn face and practical boots, watched me study the view. Most people want to bring their family up, she said casually. See what they think. I turned toward her, surprised by how easy the next word was. No, she didn't flinch. Just nodded like she understood more than she was saying. The purchase wasn't impulsive. My credit was excellent. My bonus was real. My savings were real. What was impulsive was the way I felt when I signed the paperwork. Like I was carving my name into something permanent. When the keys hit my palm, I closed my fingers around them and felt a steadiness move through me. I spent weekends up there, painting walls the color of fog, replacing cheap cabinet knobs with brass ones that warmed under my hand, assembling furniture slowly, carefully, each decision mine. I hung one framed photo in the living room, a picture of me and Ariana and Evan at a gala after we landed a major partnership. In it, I was laughing, head tipped back, unguarded. I didn't have many photos like that. On the door of the smaller bedroom, I hung a simple wooden sign I found at a local shop, birthday room. The first time I looked at it, I laughed out loud, alone, and the sound didn't echo like it did in my condo. It filled the space. On Sunday night, sitting on the deck wrapped in a blanket, I posted one photo. Me, barefoot, holding a mug of tea. The lake behind me, darkening under a pink sky. Caption: bought myself a lake cabin. Late birthday gift to the person who always shows up for me. I set the phone down and watched the sky change. 20 minutes later, I checked my screen. 11 missed calls. 19 texts. My mother had called 4 times in 7 minutes. I silenced the phone and put it inside. Not today. The next morning, the voicemails arrived like waves. Where did you get this money? Do you know what people are saying? Your father is furious. Connor is on his way to your office. Family meeting. Wednesday. Be there. I deleted them all. At work, Evan pulled me aside after a successful investor call. Whatever's going on, he said quietly, you're handling it. I can see that. Don't let anything derail you. I nodded. It won't. Later, Ariana told me Connor had shown up and demanded to see me. He tried to charm the receptionist, she said, rolling her eyes. Then he tried to intimidate her. And? I asked. And she told him you were unavailable, Ariana said. Which is corporate for, go away. I laughed, genuinely. Good. That night, my cousin Marin called, soft voice, sharp intent. Everyone's talking, she said. They think you're having some kind of breakdown. I leaned back in my chair at the cabin, listening to the wind scrape gently through the pines. Do they? They think you're jealous of Connor, she continued. I smiled, slow and calm. That sounds exactly like them. A pause. Elena, she said carefully, what are you doing? I looked at the birthday room sign on the door, the way it caught the lamplight. I'm building something, I said. Something that doesn't require permission. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. I printed the family email thread. I highlighted the money demands. I saved screenshots of the misnaming. I made a timeline. Birthdays, graduations, awards, every time I had been told not now, because Connor needed the spotlight. Then I opened a spreadsheet and started tracking what my parents called support. Connor's private school. Connor's car. Connor's tuition. Connor's rent when he needed a break. Connor's vacations. And what I got. Hand-me-down luggage. A check scribbled quickly. Silence. I wasn't doing this to punish them. I was doing it because I needed to see reality cleanly, without their fog. On Tuesday, I texted my mother one line, I can meet next Tuesday at 7. Not Wednesday. I will bring documentation. Her response came seconds later. Documentation of what? I stared at the screen, then typed, my life. If only I knew what I was walking into. The following Tuesday, I stood on my parents' front steps holding a slim storage box. Not heavy, not dramatic. Just enough to make my hands feel occupied. The sun was setting, casting the trimmed hedges in long shadows that reached toward me like old habits. I rang the doorbell instead of using my key. My father opened the door, expression already set to disapproval. You're late, he said. I'm on time, I replied, stepping past him without waiting for permission. My mother waited in the foyer with tissues in hand, eyes glossy but makeup perfect. Elena, she breathed, as if my arrival was a relief and a threat in the same moment. We've been so worried. Connor appeared from the living room holding a tumbler. His smile was tight. They led me to the dining room like this was a tribunal. The good china again. Candles again. Their favorite stage. I set the box on the sideboard and sat, hands folded. My father began immediately. This nonsense has gone far enough. My mother jumped in, voice trembling. People are asking why you bought yourself a birthday gift. Why we weren't there. Do you realize how that makes us look? I let the silence stretch just long enough for the real truth to breathe. This isn't about how you look, I said. My father's eyes narrowed. Then what is it about? I stood and walked to the sideboard. I opened the box and pulled out the first item, a photo album. Not thick. Not fancy. Just a simple book with plastic sleeves. I set it in the center of the table. What is that? Connor asked, annoyance creeping into his voice. Evidence, I said. My father scoffed. We don't have time for scrapbooks. Make time, I said, and my voice didn't shake. I opened the album. Page after page, Connor's birthdays. Professionally photographed parties. Smiling relatives. Gifts stacked like trophies. My mother in different dresses, my father holding Connor like he was a prize being displayed. I looked at Connor. Turned to page 12. He hesitated, then did it. A photo of his 18th birthday, a car with a bow. My father handing him keys. My mother crying with real joy. Then I pulled out the second album. This one is mine, I said, and slid it toward my mother. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. Empty sleeves. Mostly. A few scattered photos, me alone with a cupcake at my condo. Me and Mr. Alvarez at a small table. A blurry selfie of me in a conference room after landing a deal, my smile exhausted and proud. My mother blinked rapidly. Elena. There was nothing to put in it, I said softly. Connor swallowed hard, as if the air had gotten dense. My father tried to interrupt. We celebrated you, no, I said, and my tone sharpened just enough to cut. You acknowledged me when it was convenient. I reached back into the box and pulled out a printed spreadsheet. I placed it down like a contract. This tracks spending, I said. Connor versus me. My father's face darkened. This is ridiculous. Read it, I said. Silence. My mother stared at the numbers like they were in a foreign language. Connor's tuition, paid. Connor's rent assistance, repeated. Connor's car, paid. Connor's startup loan, paid. Then my line items, small checks. Minimal gifts. We're busy. Maybe next time. You understand. I pulled out one more thing, a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. A diary page, my handwriting childish and uneven. I read aloud, maybe next year they'll remember without Grandma calling. My mother made a sound like something cracking. My father pushed back his chair. What do you want? He snapped. An apology? Fine. We're sorry you feel slighted. There, Connor said quickly, as if he could patch the hole with speed. Now can we move on? I looked at him, really looked, and realized how much of this he'd accepted as natural. This isn't about me feeling slighted, I said. It's about you erasing me. Then I pulled out the last photo. A Christmas picture, 3 years ago, sent to me with the caption, "We missed you." It showed the table set with a place card that said, Elena. I held it up. You wanted me to feel guilty for not being here. My mother whispered, "We did miss you." I turned the photo slightly, pointing to the chair. That chair, I said quietly, isn't my chair. My father frowned. That's the guest chair, I continued. Even when you were pretending I belonged, you still put me where guests sit. The silence that followed was different from their earlier silence. This one had weight. My father's face reddened. Connor is carrying on the family name, he said, voice rising. He is the achiever. He deserved our focus. My mother's tears finally looked real. It just happened, she said. And then it became a pattern. And I was easier to ignore, I finished. Connor stared down at the albums like they might explode. I took a slow breath. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I'm not asking you to love me correctly, I said. I'm telling you what will happen now. I closed the albums gently and stood. I will not fund Connor's celebrations, I said. I will not provide my contacts. I will not be summoned to fix your discomfort. My father's mouth opened, but I held up a hand, calm, not dramatic. I'm building a life, I said. One where my worth isn't measured by what I give you. I picked up the spreadsheet and the diary page. I left the albums on the table. Then I walked to the doorway and paused, not looking back. The albums are yours, I said. Consider them a gift. Proof doesn't disappear just because you don't like it. I left. The door closed behind me with a soft click that echoed like thunder. And that's when everything shifted. A year later, the morning sun turned the lake into a sheet of gold. I stood on my deck in Vermont wearing a simple red dress, bare feet on warm wood, arranging a tray of fruit beside a cake. This time, there were 36 candles. Ariana insisted on every single one, plus a spare, for luck, because she said luck should be treated like a friend, invited, not waited for. Inside, the cabin smelled like coffee and cinnamon. Laughter drifted through the open windows. Evan showed up with his wife and a bottle of champagne, and when he hugged me, he said quietly, "Senior Director. That title fits you." It had been announced the day before. The timing felt like the universe finally learning how to be polite. My phone buzzed with a text. "Mr. Alvarez, you better be eating cake today, Elena." Not working. I smiled and typed, "Yes, sir." Therapy had helped. Not in a dramatic, movie way, more like cleaning a fogged window over and over until you could finally see the shape of things. My therapist called it breaking a system. I called it learning to breathe without asking permission. I spent Thanksgiving last year at a quiet inn with friends. And when my mother texted a guilt-heavy paragraph, I muted the thread. Boundaries weren't loud. They were consistent. When the party was in full swing, a car door slammed at the bottom of the driveway. I knew that engine sound. Connor's black sedan. He stepped onto the deck holding a wrapped package, shoulders a little stiff, like he wasn't sure he belonged here. Ariana went quiet, watching me. Evan's wife stopped mid-sentence. Connor cleared his throat. I didn't want to crash, he said, voice unsteady. But I wanted to give you this. We hadn't spoken much since the night of the albums. Short texts sometimes. A careful distance. Come in, I said, surprising myself with how genuine it felt. We're doing cake soon. Later, when the guests were inside, Connor and I sat at the end of the dock. The package rested between us. I started therapy, he admitted, staring at the water. Mom talks about it like it's a diet. Dad refuses. I didn't comment. I let him keep going. I didn't see it, he said. Not really. I thought you didn't care. You always acted like it didn't matter. I watched the water ripple. I acted like I didn't care because it hurt to care alone. He nodded, swallowing hard. Open it. I unwrapped the package. Inside was a framed photograph, old, restored, colors sharpened. Me at 8, sitting on a tire swing, laughing at something off camera. Just me. No Connor in the foreground. No adults posing. Just a moment of my existence, captured when I didn't yet know I would have to fight to be seen. I found it in Dad's storage, Connor said quietly. I had it fixed. My throat tightened. Thank you, I said, and meant it. A knock sounded at the cabin door. Connor went still. She insisted, he murmured. I didn't tell her where you were until today. I stood and walked back up the deck. My mother stood on the porch holding a small bakery box. Her hands trembled, just slightly. Happy birthday, she whispered. Inside the box was a single cupcake with one candle. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't redemption. It was a step. The party's almost over, I said gently. But you can stay for cake if you want. Relief crossed her face like sunlight. That night, after the guests left, I sat alone on the dock with a glass of champagne. The cabin glowed behind me, warm light spilling onto the deck. Last year, I'd stared at an unlit candle in an immaculate condo and wondered what was wrong with me. Tonight, I knew the answer. Nothing was wrong with me. I had simply been waiting for love in a place that only knew how to trade it. My phone chimed. Mr. Alvarez, did you celebrate properly? I smiled and typed back, for the first time, yes. I looked at my reflection in the dark water, soft, steady, real. Then I raised my glass to the woman I'd become, the one who finally learned that validation begins within. What gift have you ever given yourself that changed everything? If you liked this story, feel free to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one.